So we're talking about the breakdown of the family, but whenever I've always heard that, I've always thought, oh, nuclear family, that's the ideal. And then the breakdown is, the single family from there. And then even breakdown further, you get like Skid Row, which is what really started this conversation. But for the first time ever, I've been thinking, because of David Brooks and because of Mark Manson bringing this up and Christopher Rufo, our guest yesterday, that really the nuclear family is itself a broken family. The extended family is more of the norm. Here's Mark Manson. He said, individualism may be good economically, but the social isolation and lack of consistent quality relationships ultimately affect our mental and emotional health, our politics, and our culture. I think that's why we see so many, what do they call them, like deaths of despair these last few decades. It's the breakdown of the family, not even into single family, but the nuclear family is itself a breakdown. So how did this used to work? This is why it's more. Most people lived in big, sprawling households. So in 1800, 75% of Americans were farmers, and most of the other 25% worked in the family business. So in that situation, you had 7 or 8 kids, everyone worked in the family business or the family farm. You had your aunts, your uncles, cousins, everyone there was working together. The technical term for this is a corporate family. A corporate family, like a corporation, right? So it's a social unit organized around the family business or the family farm. So in 1800, 90% of families were corporate families. 90%. Now there's 2 benefits. Well, there's a lot of benefits, but 2 in particular, 2 benefits of this. First of all, great resilience, very supportive, right? If someone gets sick, someone passes away, everyone's there to step in. I think the modern version of this is, you hear young couples, they want to move closer to home once they start having kids so that their parents they can be a free babysitter from time to time. And I hear that, I'm like, free babysitter? Like, families used to be a lot more than a free babysitter from time to time. The other great strength is that the socializing force. So multiple adults would teach kids right from wrong. Like, everyone would pitch in raising kids. I was talking about this with my wife yesterday. We have number 3 any day now. Like, our 3rd kid could be born today. Friday's the due date. I was explaining this to her. She's like, yeah, that's why back in the day you could have a bunch of kids because brothers, sisters, everyone is helping raise them. Right now, it's all on her and I. Unfortunately, we have an amazing church who can help out as well, but if we didn't have the church, I don't know what we'd do. We couldn't do it. That's why right now it's like, everyone's like, whoa, 3 kids. Like, people look at us like we're Amish. Like, oh, wow, whew, how are you gonna handle 3? It's like 3 is like nothing compared to like American history. You used to have like 10 kids. The guest we're having up next, Carol Swain, I think she was like one of 12 or something ridiculous like that, right? But you could do that because everyone was doing it together. And everyone would teach the kids how to behave, how to be kind, how to be generous, all these things, reinforcing the norms that Christopher Rufo was talking about yesterday. So anyway, that was 1800. Then something happened, right? The family used to be built around the business. And then in the 1850s, the Industrial Revolution started. But something, it was interesting, like, people started to double down on the extended family because families saw a crumbling culture and an immoral culture out there with the new industrialized world. And the extended family became a sort of barrier to that. So actually, during the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, the prevalence of the extended family, it increased. It doubled from 1750 to 1900. The prevalence of the extended family doubled, but it took on a new role. It wasn't just based around the economic health of the family, but also now the moral health. This is John Ruskin. He was alive around the 1800s or so, social critic. He said, the home is a sacred place, a vessel temple, a temple of the hearth, watched over by household gods, before whose faces none may come, but those whom they can receive with love. So the home became not so much an economic unit as it started out as, but more of an emotional and moral and spiritual protector from the toxic effect of the world. Now, quick aside, these extended families are not all good. I don't want to romanticize it all, right? There's no privacy in an extended family like this. There's more stability, yes, but less mobility. It can be stifling in a lot of ways. Family bonds are thicker, but individual choice is diminished too. Yeah, you get a lot of people around the Thanksgiving dinner table, but you can't eat until everybody's there, right? But eventually the forces of the Industrial Revolution were too strong, and young men and women, they left the bonds of the family to pursue the American dream, and that was the beginning of the nuclear family. Here's David Brooks. He said, children were no longer raised to assume economic roles. They were raised so that at adolescence they could fly from the nest, become independent, and seek partners of their own. They were not raised for embeddedness with the family, but for autonomy. So check this out. By 1960, so like 60, 80 years, within a 60, 80 year time frame, 78% of all children were living with their two parents married apart from their extended family. So think about this. In 1800, 90% of families were corporate families, living together, extended family unit. 90%. That was 1800. By 1960s, not that much period, 78% of kids were now lived in the nuclear family. Yet now we look back on that as not only the norm, like that nuclear family is not only the norm, but also the ideal. But is it? Because the nuclear family is a relatively new phenomenon. We got to take a break. Let me try to wrap this up. For a while, it worked. For a while, for a brief period, the nuclear family worked. Everything seemed good. And it's this moment when the American ideal, that American ideal of the nuclear family became ingrained in our heads, right? The married couple with 2.5 kids. And like quite literally right now, I am a married couple with like 2.5 kids, right? 2 and then one more on the way any day now. This is what we think of as family. But really, that was only a thing from like 1950 to 1965. He said, and this is David Brooks, he says that 1950 to 1965 window was not normal. It was a freakish historical moment when all of society conspired, wittingly or not, to obscure the essential fragility of the nuclear family. And one reason why the nuclear family sort of worked for a short amount of time is because families were in their own suburban homes, yes, but they were still close, right? Families were still relatively geographically close, and also people were more neighborly with each other, right? So this was before television, this was before air conditioning, when the front porch was the main place to congregate for the family, all right? So people, it was hot, so we're just gonna sit outside on the front porch, and so is everybody else, so we're all here together, right? Much more of a neighborhood vibe. This is Alan Earhart. He wrote this is a book called The Lost City. It's a book about 1950s suburban life in Chicago. He said, to a young homeowner in a suburb like Elmhurst in the 1950s, it was to participate in a communal enterprise that only the most determined loner could escape. Think about that. Compare that to the people who are homeless in Skid Row, right? Like, how determined were they to escape? Probably not even that determined, right? I bet you could talk to a lot of those people, and they just slipped real quickly out of the communal bonds. But here's this guy saying in the suburbs in the 1950s, you had to intentionally try to slip out of it. You had to try to be a loner. That's how communal and tight it was. Barbecues, volleyball games, babysitting co-ops, constant bartering of household goods, child rearing by the nearest parents who happened to be around, neighbors wandering through the door at any hour without knocking. All these were devices by which young adults who had been set down in a wilderness of tract homes made a community. It was a life lived in public. Slater Crusaders, thanks for watching the first on YouTube. If you want more, like, subscribe. We got plenty.